He wants to say, I think we need to just jump right into which guidelines we can talk about. So, again, a reminder.
I just started the recorder. Sorry, I wanted to make sure you knew that I started recording the meeting.
Okay. Hello, Metro Nashville. Just a reminder that we can't vote on anything in this context, but we can have a robust discussion and ideally walk things right up to the point of adoption so that we can get this thing done on Saturdays. So the chair that I see who is with us is Tyler. So Tyler, the floor is yours, my friend.
Hey, so on proposal development, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the last meeting, so I'm really not sure where we stand. I think the last online meeting that we had gotten to a point of sharing a draft, and unfortunately, I'm precluded from communicating with you all outside of these meetings, so I'm really not sure where things ended last Saturday. I apologize for that.
Carol, can you give a quick recounting, because I know it's probably in front of you, of what we did on proposal development?
Yeah, let me pull it up, because I did on the proposal development, they began talking about comments about the waterfall system for any funds that were not used on a project that ended up being excess funds and how they would be applied to other projects. There was also a discussion about the funding of the projects, where minimum of 300,000 to a maximum of 800,000. Or did that fall under eligibility and selection?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What might be helpful, Quinta, do you have Tyler's and his subcommittee's draft there with you? We had it at the last meeting. Can we maybe just throw that up and walk it back through? Because we also have a bunch of people on the call who weren't able to join us on Saturday. So we might as well pop that on the screen if we can.
I have to get permission.
Take us through it.
I have to get permission to share.
Oh, I can't do that.
I just gave you presenter rights, so you can share the screen.
Whitney, I think the other thing was Quinta had not received some updates that Nick had done from the last call as well.
That sounds right.
I sent them to Quinta Martin at AOL. Is that the right email address?
Yes.
Okay. I sent those a couple weeks ago.
Those are those. Did you send something to me since Saturday?
No, this was before. It's like April 25th.
Is this your last document?
Are you sharing your screen, Quinta?
I thought I was. You see it now?
Yeah.
Is this your last document? I cut off other stuff off the top and just started with the middle.
Gotcha. If you scroll to the very bottom, the stuff I added was at the bottom.
Nick, are you talking?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, where do you want me to stop?
Just scroll to the very bottom of the proposal development section.
Keep going?
Yeah, all the way to the very, very, very bottom.
So I believe we worked on V3 41323 at the 2 Saturdays ago, I guess. So I don't know if there's a different file name that Nick that you might have used.
Yeah, so what I sent was a version. Yeah, I'll just re-forward this to you, Quinta, so it'll be at the top of your inbox.
Are you talking about third stage review or the other information that you put out? I wonder if there was a supplement.
Yeah, there's a supplement I sent a couple weeks ago, so I'm just forwarding that. Okay, I just resent it.
Did you see that? You see that?
Yes. Yes, that is what I said. Cool. Tyler, do you want to talk through it or should I?
Feel free, Nick, to go through this.
Okay. I think the final section probably needs some tweaking. It's the waterfall section. So I think I'll just talk about the first two to start off with. So the first point we added in was just to state what I think is the obvious, but project funding should generally be resolved in order of total votes for each project. So basically, we should look at which projects get the most votes, and those should be the first funded. It's just generally how we should go about funding projects. And then the second point is where we as a group discussed the possibility of a project expanding or spanning multiple SVI districts, and how does, from which bucket of funding does that project get funded from? And we talked about maybe it should be taken from each SVI bucket according to the footprint of the project, but we decided that's a bit complicated. And since the budget delegates are going to be going through so much work already, we just wanted to kind of give them a simpler rubric to use when determining which SVI bucket to pull from for a given project. So the methodology we landed on was if a physical footprint of a project includes multiple SVI districts, so 2 or more, then it's the recommendation of our body to draw from the SVI budget that has the highest share of its budget remaining, if that makes sense. So that would mean if one bucket has 80% remaining, another has 75%, then pull from the bucket that has 80% remaining. And this was just to ensure that we're taking the budget from the SBI buckets that have the most to give to projects. And then we also agreed on a threshold of a project must have at least 20% of the footprint in any one of the SBI buckets in order to draw from it, just so we eliminate SBIs that won't really benefit very much from projects.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Is everybody generally clear on how this structure works? Does anybody have questions or concerns?
Yeah, I have just a question about, this is Lauren again. Project funding should be generally, is the total amount of votes. Is that what I'm hearing that will occur? I'm just going back to my other notes at one point in time, and it said project cost plus project votes plus FVI equals funding. That's what Fabian shared. So has that changed a little bit based on what this proposal is? Is that correct, or am I just misunderstanding it all?
No, that wasn't our intention. I think we are just trying to state what we think is a assumed procedure, which is just that the vote totals should guide how we determine which projects get funded. And all of these are recommendations, not strict guidelines, so there's some flexibility.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm just absolutely trying to, and Fabian, are we stuck, and not stuck, but is that a definite project cost plus project votes plus SVI equals funding? And does that read, is that okay that we do that? And because one of the things that was said a couple meetings ago is the votes aren't weighted, the project is. I'm just trying to clarify in my own mind, but if it makes sense, and that's, so Fabian, is that okay with what that line is or what the intention is?
I don't really know exactly what type of a project will be you will be applying this to. Uh, so really, you guys will come back to try to utilize this in December when you're counting the votes and you're trying to assign the projects. This won't have an impact in the middle. It will be mostly something that it will come back to you when you are deciding how to tally all the votes and how to assign the projects. So I think at some point in the next couple of months, you might want to fine tune this and explain what type of a project will be defined by this thing. Like if you are, I mean, the size of a project. Anyway, I guess I just think it will need more definitions to be applicable.
I think one of the examples that got used several weeks ago was looking at District 6, which contains all of the SVIs, and somebody brought up the idea of, okay, what if somebody suggests that we put trash cans down the length of Shelby Avenue? One end of Shelby is the highest SVI, one end of Shelby is the lowest SVI. So how would that project get weighted? And it feels like this is an attempt to address that. Nick, does that sound right to you?
Yes, and I think it was also we had discussed at one point perhaps we should go by SVI bucket and try and exhaust those budgets kind of in order. But then we kind of decided that no, we should just go by which projects have the most votes and just kind of let the buckets exhaust themselves. So I think what I'm hearing from this is, and I think that line is unclear as to what we're trying to account for. So yeah, maybe we strike it for now and pick it up later with some thoughts about clarifying that.
You're talking about striking the whole section or just that one first line there?
I think just the first line, but I mean, to Fabian's point though, I didn't realize we can keep tinkering with these. So I think these three are really about how do we as a steering committee adjudicate and fund these projects. And I think maybe we want to sit on that a bit more because we have until December. Because I think we just need to game it out a bit with some examples just so we understand the impacts. Because it's easy to write something down, but until we kind of game it out together a little bit, it's hard to understand the full ramifications.
Whitney?
Yes, Fabio.
Let me clarify what I said. I mean, I want you guys to adapt as much as possible to serve of guidance to the process, but I want you to also know that you can amend your guidelines with a majority vote at any point. So if down the road or when I come back with feedback from legal, you decide, well, we need to tweak this part, you can always do that, but it'll be good to have as much of a adopted set of guidelines so the rest of the people can start working on stuff. I don't know if I answered your question, Nick.
That makes sense. So I think the recommendation, Nick, then would be to let's see if we can get this into what we adopt, and then if it needs to be amended based on practical experience, that's the way to go.
Whitney, yeah.
Yes. And I apologize with the document on the screen. I can't see anyone's hands, so just jump in.
Hi, everyone. I did not raise my hand. I just said Whitney. So thanks for recognizing me. I'm very excited to be here. Participatory budgeting is something that I love and that I ran on. And so seeing it actually get done the last year or two has been very good. I wanted to say that at this particular things that we're discussing, me being here, I will try to be quiet as much as possible, which is almost impossible for me. But the essence of participatory budgeting is for you guys to make all the decisions with no council involvement. I'm just going to be observing. But I wanted to jump in with that conversation that we're having now. It seems to me that that first line And maybe what I heard Nick say is in the event that there is a tie or there's impossible with the formula that you have to be able to make a decision between 2 or 3 multiple things, then you will use the vote. I don't know if that's my understanding, Nick, what you're trying to explain. And if that's the case, it might be like a tier thing to your supplemental issues where you're saying maybe we use this criteria the first time, but when we run into ties or situations where you have different projects with the same thing, then we use the votes to decide. I just wanted to jump in and say that's the way that I'm hearing it. It may not be right, but if that has more complication to it, please disregard it. And like I said, I'm just here as an observer. I'm going to be your council liaison, and I'll be attending as much meeting as possible. Most of the time I will not be speaking, but for this one, I just thought that's what I'm hearing, and I don't know whether it makes sense to have a tier 1, tier 2 kind of supplemental guidelines. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councilmember Suara. Nick, Tyler, did that clear anything up, or do you feel like you have more work to do still on this?
Yeah, but I'm happy to provide some thoughts here. Just on the first bullet aside, I guess what we were trying to do is yeah, just when we're trying to resolve the question from the steering committee's end of how to, I guess, designate an SBI and where to pull the funds from for projects that span multiple SBI location boundaries, I guess, and so that the budget delegates don't have to do that when they get to they have kind of clear instructions at the end of the day to look back on to see where we have directed them to look from. But I guess on the first bullet point, I mean, I think the intent is the same as there's a bullet point in the voting section or the original, I guess, draft voting section that just says the steering committee will accept the top vote getters for each quartile until the quartile's budget has been exhausted. I think we're just trying to reinforce that and reiterate that. So I'm not sure that it's necessary to the extent that language in the voting section still remains in that section of the guidelines.
Tyler, that's good. That's good clarity. I wonder if we could zoom out for a second and go back to y'all's guidelines as a whole and have you guys walk us through, you gentlemen walk us through changes that have been made since the last time. Tyler, I know you once got up and did a presentation with the projector, but are there things that changed because of that? Are there other things within the larger guidelines themselves that we need to take a look at?
No, other than the guidelines, the supplemental guidelines that Nick shared, there really aren't any changes. We were just trying to provide somewhat of a rubric or a decision tree sort of language in there to add some clarity to the process. Hopefully we were successful in that and not adding more confusion, but the intent was to sort of take the thought process on ourselves instead of having to the budget delegates to spend a bunch of time trying to think about how to do that.
Right on. Well, would you mind, just for the sake of the group, very quickly just running through this, since it has been several weeks since the last time we looked at it, again with the idea that hopefully come Saturday we'll be ready to adopt this with no further questions. So it might be great to just refresh all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first changes that we really tried to make were in relation to the number of projects that we wanted to be submitted. We wanted to put in, we went back and forth on a required minimum number of goals versus kind of a suggested number of submissions. And we ended up with just the idea of a goal instead of a requirement of 20 submissions per council district, just to ensure that we have quality submissions for each district. That's kind of the idea that we can have multiple proposals that hopefully get funded per district if they get the votes to do that, and that we have quality submissions that the budget delegates can parse through, combine into proposals, et cetera, to get a ballot that hopefully is quality, I guess. So that's kind of the main goal in the first stage review is just to put a stake in the ground on the number of ideas that we want at 20. If you could scroll down, Quinta, a little bit. So we didn't change too much otherwise. The other part of the goal, I guess, was to keep those I think in the original guidelines, we went from just a no goal or anything like that on the number of submitted ideas. And then it went down to, I think, immediately down to maybe 3, 2, 1, but we ended up going 5, 3, 1. And so what happens is we want, after the first stage review, out of those 20 that are the goal submissions, to have 5 good quality submissions at the end of the first stage review to flow down into the second stage review. The second stage review would take those top 3 ideas per council district and further kind of refine those. And then there's some review processes in there. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Yeah, and then so there's in order to kind of have oversight as the steering committee, we wanted to just throw some language in there that would allow us to get in writing if anything gets kicked out of the second stage review, just to have clarity and understanding of why those projects got kicked back, because they had already made it through the first stage review, right? So that's really all that second, the text that's up there right now is designed to do, is just add a little bit of clarity and oversight to the committee's role here. If we can keep going down. We scroll down a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, and then so from the, oh, that's good. Keep going down to the third stage review. So same thing, there's another caveat in the guidelines in the third stage review for another review by the Metro attorney, and I guess the staff designee, Fabian, who we greatly respect and appreciate, but we did want to add just that layer of review back in for the steering committee so that we get in writing if anything is deemed ineligible after the first and second stage reviews. We wanted to get that in writing, I guess, as to why it was found to be ineligible in the third stage after passing through the first 2 stages. So we just asked for a reasoning to be submitted to the steering committee in writing. And then I think from there, where we went was a little bit of a waterfall feature, kind of going back up. If anything gets kicked out of the first stage review, you kind of go back to your top 3 or top 5, the ones that were still remaining from that previous stage review. And we added just some mechanisms in there for that to hopefully add clarity. So we're not starting from scratch if something were to get nixed at the end of the project or at the end of the third stage review. We're not starting from scratch. We're just going back up and kind of starting over with what was left over from the first 2 review stages. And I believe that's generally it, other than a few minor just clarification edits and copy edits.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Folks, whole group, does anybody have thoughts, comments, questions?
Well, could we look at that last section again? We were working through it and then jumped up for the entire, no, the supplemental. Yeah. Because I think that should be retained. I mean, it was the discussion whether it should be retained or not.
I think the discussion was whether it's worth going ahead and retaining it now to amend it later, or if there's additional fine tuning that needs to get done.
Well, I think it's good.
Thank you,
I mean,
Tom.
to retain it, it's something for the budget delegates to work with.
Yeah.
And it kind of assumes that there aren't going to be surprises or difficult situations, but there always are. But this is sort of based on just a very straightforward situation, which is a good place to start.
Thank you so much for that feedback. Is there anybody else having an opinion? Y'all are not opinionated this evening, but please know that I love you anyway. If let's pretend we were going to vote, which we cannot do, but would we hypothetically feel like this is solid enough that we could move it very close to adoption for the following Saturday? I'm seeing some thumbs up. I'm not hearing anybody screaming.
I'm in favor of that. This is David.
Thank you, David. All right. It seems like everybody is generally okay with these, and obviously, please feel free to meditate on them. Fabian and Quinta, would it be possible for us to get just an email with a PDF of all of the guidelines prior to next Saturday's meeting? I know it's probably in the folder and all of that stuff, but like, could that come to us just so that everybody can sort of look at it in their own format and on their own time?
Yeah.
I think that would be really helpful. Great. Well, then let's move on to voting. Lindsay, I see that you are with us. Do you want to walk through this since we had just so very little time? And I don't really remember what we got hung up on in the case of this on Saturday either, but I do know that we had sort of tabled it for this meeting. Lindsay, are you with us? I see her name. We'll give her a second to see if she can pipe in. Does anybody else from voting have thoughts?
Lindsay sent a chat and said her audio isn't working well.
Oh no.
At the last meeting, we discussed ballots at libraries and public spaces. Steering committee members were advised they would be given ballots to distribute. We discussed online voting at Hub Nashville, discussed the mailing of ballots and how those ballots would be returned by the voters. Discussed multiple individuals at one address and how that would be managed. We also, there was a question raised about if you have two individuals at the same address with the same name, for instance, a father and son who do not differentiate by using senior or junior, and it was communicated that those votes would be thrown out. And then we deferred to the next meeting.
Thank you so much, Carol. It does feel like that same name thing feels sticky. I don't know how often it will come up in practice, but that does feel like it's something that might need a better resolution than just, sorry, your dad didn't put its junior on you. Now neither one of you have a voice.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was wondering, I mean, like, in it, I don't know what we do to differentiate with something like that. Do we put birth dates? I mean, you know.
As it was explained to me,
Can I make a comment about that?
yes, please.
Sure.
So any ballot that is not clear or that is iffy like that, it will come back to you as a committee, as a provisional ballot to decide what to do with it. So no ballot will be thrown out. You guys will have the final word in December to decide what to do with ballot.
Thank you. I couldn't see who else was speaking as Fabian chimed in. So whoever that is, please feel free to keep talking.
Jason, was that you?
I was going to say that I added all the things that Carol just mentioned. So I didn't have anything about the same name at the same address, if you will. So don't have us solve for that. But obviously, if they're provisional ballots that we can cure, I mean, I wouldn't imagine that it's going to happen a whole heck of a lot. But if it does, obviously, I think that gives us a avenue to handle that. And Lindsay, I think you keep asking that. It's each ballot, they're going to choose 5 things, period. So it's not that they get to vote 5 times. They choose 5 things on one ballot, and that's the end of the ballot. So if there's 5 people living in a house, there's 5 ballots. Each person votes for 5 things on each one of those 5 ballots, and it gets sent in. As I understand it, unless I'm wrong, in which case, Fabian, please feel free to steamroller me.
No, you did good.
I do remember another thing that we had a bit of discussion about was the idea that we're mailing a ballot to every household, but not providing a way for those to be mailed back. I think the concern on that was budgetary. Has anybody ruminated on that since Saturday and have any further thoughts?
I think one of the things there, and I mean, this isn't a great fix, but the ballots can be dropped off at public libraries, at the voting expo events, and obviously the online source. I get that not everybody has access to online, and that it might be challenging for some folks. Yes, Lindsay. Yes, that's correct. You're spot on there. Yes, they will be available at libraries. So mailing them is not necessarily a requirement. They can drop them off at the polling stations too. I know that's not like a perfect fix, but I think it's more cost efficient than God only knows what it would cost to send these beastly ballots out. Right? Fabian, what are your thoughts there?
I think you're right on the money. I think you guys worry about the mail-in ballot, but most people are going to vote online. We saw that on the second cycle, a dramatic bigger number of people voted online. Then the rest voted either in person, going at the poll place, and very few people in the 2 cycles mailed in the ballot. So I don't think that it's going to be an issue. And we at the mayor's office will be happy to, if somebody calls us in, we'll mail them a ballot. But it's different to mail 1 ballot with an envelope than mail 500,000 ballots.
Okay, then do we need to strike this line that says 1 ballot will be sent to each household and more can be requested for additional household members? Jason, do you see the line I'm talking about?
Yeah, actually, the most recent one that I sent in, that was stricken from it because I didn't think that was how we were going to be doing things.
Oh. Is there any chance you can shoot that over to Quinta real quick so that one can get up on the screen for us to look at?
I'm so sorry. I sent that about noon today. Apologies. I don't think I can share, but Quinta, I think I sent around noon today or so. I'm sorry it came in so late.
What are you cooking, Jason?
Let's see. I'm doing some tofu with kind of some blackening seasoning on the griddle, some steak that I sous vide and just searing on the outside. I did some stir-fried broccoli with sesame and soy, and then brown rice because that's super boring. And
we are having the next meeting in your house.
Let's do it. Come on. I'll feed you guys. I'm making for the Kosher Food Festival this Sunday, I'm making 30 chickens on Hillel's giant smoker there. So you guys can join me at 6 o'clock at Vanderbilt in the morning, and we'll make some chicken together. You guys can be my testers.
That's amazing. Lindsay, thank you. I understand the recipe better than the voting section. That's fantastic. Quinta, are you able to find that more updated version?
I'm looking for my email now.
Okay, thanks. Zulfat, to your question, in terms of ensuring we have as much participation as possible, did we consider the individuals that don't have computer or access to the library? We have there people like Judith Tackett are working overtime to register people at the contributor office, and obviously these voting. Sorry, I'm hearing myself echo really bad. Can everybody mute themselves? We're making sure that like the voting expo, hopefully there will be somebody with a computer there for folks that don't have it. And if you've got suggestions in terms of how we can best assist people who need paper ballots, who don't have access to a library, I'm sure we're absolutely open to those suggestions.
Okay.
Jason, you want me to make you a presenter?
Sure, if that works, I'd be happy to. I've got it pulled up right here.
Quinta, I'll make him a presenter, okay?
It's a great idea, Fabian. Let's do that.
So you should have it now.
One second here, guys.
Everybody on the count of three, say your favorite Star Wars character. 1, 2, 3, Yoda.
The Mandalorian.
In the meanwhile, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, it's me again. For example, if we're gonna have a voting party, so people can actually vote there, and we can collect those ballots and send them to the mayor's office.
That's right.
Okay, so in that case, we do not need the postage, right? The stamp?
Right, and they can drop them off at the expos, libraries. Can everybody hear me? You can drop them off at the expos, the library, any community events. And I'm really sorry about the echo. I'm not sure why that's happening.
Quinta, can you try to mute yourself? I think you're on here twice.
Okay. Oh, nuts. All right, so here we go. I removed, yes, I removed that piece about people will be mailed a ballot because we're not going to be mailing them a ballot, right? Okay, so that was removed. I don't think, other than what Carol mentioned at the beginning, I don't think that, oh, there's page 2, pardon. Let's see, here's page 2. Yeah, there weren't that many other changes other than what we spoke about.
Jason,
So yeah,
can you go back down to the second page?
sure.
Within each quartile, if there's a tie or available funds do not cover the cost of the next highest vote, the Metro Council may attempt to secure additional money. Does that feels like that kind of lives in the same place as the suggested section from our friends at Proposal Development? Do we need to somehow figure out what section all of this belongs in and consolidate that?
Well, it doesn't seem like it really belongs in voting. No, I mean, I'm not being flippant.
No, I know
just,
you're not. It's. I wonder if this. It looks like there's at least 4 bullet points here, and that should go. All 4 of those should go elsewhere.
Yeah, because I mean they do. I mean, it's talking about basically how things are prioritized with the vote getting moment. That's how it came over to us. But now that you mentioned that, yeah, it does seem like that would go better in another space. Sorry to be the fly in the ointment.
Sorry, everybody. Somebody came to my door to try to sell me pest control, and my dog was freaking out. He's gone now. What does anybody have a thought in terms of where we should put the information that's contained within these sections? Should it be moved to proposal development? Should it be moved someplace? Should we have just a standalone section for funding for voting resolution? I'm not a lawyer. Elizabeth, thoughts?
I was just going to say that, quite frankly, these last 4 bullet points, hold on one second, I'll scroll down here. I think anything below, I think really it is helpful to consider the SVI, like all those last 5 bullet points kind of tie together. While there is a bit of relevance to voting, I think in general, I don't know. It's tough. That's how it was delivered to us. And now that we're saying this, it does kind of tend to tack on to some of these other areas.
Hey, this is Tyler. I mean, those last 5 bullets almost kind of fit in with what we were trying to do in proposal development with that supplemental.
Do you want them? I'll give them to you.
Well, I was just going to propose perhaps we can add a new section, as you mentioned, that just pertains to the SBI and the budgeting component, and take that section out of voting completely. Combine it with the proposal development section on SBI adjudication and simplify all of our lines.
Okay, very good. So aside from that, does anybody have any questions about, or is there something missing here above that you guys are seeing?
You missed one thing on this, and that is that people, if you guys want to, they can also vote by phone, by calling 311. And they will have a Spanish speaker or a Kurdish speaker taking the phone call.
I'm so sorry, Fabian. I missed you at that. Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, people can call in the 311 Hub Nashville phone number.
Okay.
And they can talk to a person and give them the phone if that's something you guys want to accept. I just wanted to remind you that that's an option.
Oh, I didn't know that. That sounds fantastic. Anybody else have any texture to add to that? I think that's real easy to add, and I think that's even more accessibility.
But I thought I heard Fabian mention that in the event that a vote it's not clear, I guess, if it's an eligible voter, that it comes back to the steering committee to be adjudicated. Is that right?
The ballot curing process?
Yeah, is the ballot curing process, is that written down here in the guidelines already?
No, it is not, because I'm just kind of finding out about that, but I'm going to add that.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. I really appreciate that. Anyone else, or Lindsay, or?
Do you have in this voting process here that it is multilingual? I don't see that anywhere in here.
Nope, but I can add that.
That the ballot is multilingual.
Ballot. Okay, got that. Thank you.
How do you check the eligibility of by phone voters, so that it doesn't come back later as to people? Would that be something that you would look into, so that if people will see people just calling out, they meet the eligibility criteria, so it doesn't look as if there's something that somebody might ask later?
I think so. I believe the verification process that we're using we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. And as I'm told, it will just be the person's name and their address. So all we're really looking for is duplication, not necessarily to prove that that person lives there. Does that make sense?
It does, and so there will be someone, and Fabian might be able to elaborate on that. So there will be a designated number, or will there be people on the line that will be verifying before taking the vote? What I'm trying to do is make sure that there is no any reason for anyone to contest the result at the end of the day based on the method of voting. So that's what I'm trying to clarify.
So, council member, remember, we are not supposed to influence them. We're here just.
Not in any way, just asking questions.
Yeah.
Not in any way. I was just asking them questions, that's all.
Yes, Councilmember Suarez, we've had a lot of discussions about the integrity of the ballots, and I think if anything, in this particular instance, I think lending ourselves to being as flexible and I don't want to say lenient election security, because that's certainly not what we're going for, but we just want to make this as accessible as possible. So say, for example, if there's somebody at an unhoused encampment and there's 30 people that use the address of that encampment, we don't want to throw those people out. We just want to make this as welcoming as possible. And the only way that something would get tossed is if it didn't have their name and address on it, or if they duplicated the name and address, and we'd have an opportunity to cure that. So I know you're not supposed to be influencing. I just want to assuage you. We've really thought a lot about this and trying to figure out how to balance election integrity and being as open as possible, because we also want to make this available to people that aren't citizens, that just live in our communities. So we're trying to keep this as accessible as possible.
Thank you, and I'll be quiet. I do not want to sway in any way. It was just because the phone, it appears as if the phone was the first time being discussed, was the only reason why I added that into it. And the fact I'm in your meeting in the middle where everything is already decided, I will be sending any question that I have to Fabian and not. But I just said the phone piece because I thought it was the first time, and I was trying to maybe suggest for the team to think through it, but it appears as if you guys got it, you've thought through everything. Thank you for your time. I will go back on mute. Thanks. Great answers. And I love the fact that we want to make it open to everybody, that you've talked about all of that. Honestly, that's the only way it would work. And so thank you for all your time and effort on it.
Certainly, and Councilmember Suarez, thank you for your caring about that. I really appreciate that. All right, Whitney, I think that were there any other things that anybody else has? Excuse me, I'm sorry, Chair.
I think Elizabeth has her hand up, and then I have a quick thing.
Okay. Hi, Elizabeth. What can I answer for you?
Hey, so I was thinking about maybe a device we could use when we were speaking about having an ineligible ballot. And so I was wondering if we have a ballot number that we could publish the number of the ineligible ballot. It's very unlikely that someone would go back and look up that number and try and cure, but just as a means of addressing what seems to be a hole, which is basically notice that your vote was ineligible. And so I was trying to think through a way that we could capture that and give someone an opportunity to be heard and to learn that their vote is ineligible. It's just a thought.
That sounds like a really good idea. I would throw that one over to Fabian to know if the technology for such a thing even exists.
Unfortunately, I don't think I understood what she was asking.
She's asking for each ballot to have a number affiliated with it, such that if there was to be a problem with the ballot, that we would publish that number And then the person who had placed that ballot would have an opportunity to know that it was ineligible or that it needed to be cured. Is that what you're getting for, Elizabeth?
That's
That
already
was
in place.
that. It is okay.
That's
Oh,
already
as
in
well.
place. That
Thanks,
that's in the
Quinta.
that's in the vote count process.
Hot dog. And
Jason,
then,
you explained it a lot better than I did, by the way. Thank you.
oh God, no, sorry. No sweat. And I think, thank you. That's a really great bring up. And I can't remember who was next. There was somebody else.
Yeah, this is Nick. I just had a
Hey,
quick,
Nick.
the social vulnerability index, requiring that to be printed on the ballot. So the way it's written, it says, will include an indication of what SVI quartile the project serves. But if we're dealing with, like, we were trying to figure out if a project spans multiple districts, which goes on the ballot. So I don't necessarily have a solution, but just recognizing there's that contradiction, I guess.
I would like to suggest that we take everything from that bullet point that you just talked about, Nick, down to the bottom of this and toss it into a section that goes along with your suggested SVI guidelines, and that some of our brilliant folks here, again, not to keep calling you out, Elizabeth, figure out a way to incorporate all of that into a single section about SVI with regards to project funding after the vote. So is that you thumbs up, Nick? You're going to volunteer to be a part of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your service to Nashville. If people would like to be involved in that process, I mean, it makes sense to have the folks who are already in the sections, the subcommittees that those various SVI indicators exist within, if that made any sense. Like if you're on a subcommittee where something in there talks about SVI, you should probably be a part of that conversation. I don't know if that means we need to have another meeting somehow between now and next Saturday, or if we just want to hash it out on Saturday into a single section that reads nice and figure out where it goes. Does anybody have a thought?
I mean, I'm happy to cut those pieces out and send it over to that team. I don't know if that speeds along the process, but
I don't want to speak. For me personally, I'm happy to just have like a little subcommittee meeting with those who are interested before the meeting on Saturday and just kind of hash it out as a subcommittee and then present our recommendations. But I don't know who else would be interested in doing that.
Okay. If you are interested in doing that, and to reiterate, this is taking this SVI language out of voting, combining it with the SVI language that's in proposal development, and crafting a new subsection of this that deals with how we will manage SVI in terms of dispersing funding to the projects that have succeeded in the vote. Please email Fabian and Quinta your names, and we'll start there and figure out if, yeah, like Nick said, if the right thing to do is to come at 12:30 or something on Saturday to work on it a little bit, or if y'all feel like it's something we can just do in the room, we can do that too. But it does feel like this stuff needs to go live someplace else. Quinta, I'm sorry, Jason, can you stop sharing your screen so I can see the whole?
Oh, yes, I will figure out how to do that right now. Hold on. Go away. I'm sorry, I'm not super used to WebEx.
It's in the up. It's in the top, very top.
R2D2.
No, not leave meeting. For the love of God. Nope. Also not that. Hey, wait for it. No, I don't want to save it. Oh, thank God.
I'm muted. Okay, to recap, we cannot deal with eligibility because we are lacking the chair of that department. project development, it feels like we're in good shape. We need to address the new subsection that lives somewhere in the gray area between project development and voting. Does that sound like what everybody else has heard? You can just nod, and if you're not on screen, you're welcome to put something in the comments or put a thumbs up in your box or just continue to go about your lives as you're all doing. Oh, I see thumbs up. Thank you so much. Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss while we are here on this call where we can't vote for anything, but we might want to toss some things around before we get to Saturday? Anybody at all?
We have eligibility done yet?
We don't have the chair of that subcommittee, which was our problem last Saturday. So because there are some questions regarding the budget minimum maximum, we were going to wait for him. Jarrett, I see your hand.
Sent some emails, so I just wanted to check and see. I know we're back and forth on the meetings at the library due to the garage shut down from the structural issues, so I didn't know. Just want to check and see what our plan was for Saturday and location, just to confirm it.
We have moved to the Pruitt Library over in Napier.
For Saturday's meeting though, we will be at the Bordeaux Library.
Oh, we are moving now to the Bordeaux Library.
The Pruitt Library was not available for meeting, so we will be at the Bordeaux Library on Saturday, and you'll get the notification with the address for that.
All right. Thank you. Good question, Jarrett. Fabian, I see your hand.
Just in case the chair is not available next meeting either, you guys want us to ask him a question and then we can get the answer back to you? Is there anything that you guys want us to clarify with?
I mean, it feels like it's kind of a philosophical discussion around this budget. I heard there were people definitely had questions and concerns, which was why we tabled it. So if he is not available, I wonder if there was sort of a vice chair in that committee. I feel like, was it Kenyatta who was extremely involved and knowledgeable? I mean, maybe she then just ends up taking over, but I would certainly love for the chair to be present before we adopt this section. I don't know. Tyler, your hand's up.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask about a different subject. So we're on the question of how to get around repairs being out. My question's on a different topic. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What do other people think about this? Do we feel comfortable moving forward with eligibility if we've got the draft as it stands? I don't think Kenyatta's not here either. So if we've got the draft as it stands, Ramona, there's a hand.
Hey, yes, matter of fact, I'm on that team, eligibility team. And so my question to you, Fabian and Quinta and Whitney. So for the last two sessions, our chair has not been available. So at what point do we decide with the members that we have, because there's like 5 in our team? So on Saturday, what happens if it's just 1 or 2 of us that shows up? I mean, my point is, we need to move this forward. Maybe we need to get the opinions of other members in this group, since we don't know who's going to show up. But I know there's 5 on our team, and from week to week, it seems like there's just 1 or 2 of us. That's my question.
Thanks, Ramona. I think that is a good question. Nick, is your hand up related to this?
No, sorry, another point.
That's okay. And Jarrett, is that just your old hand from before?
Did we adopt some rules of order that would preclude making decisions without the chair of these subcommittees?
No, but it felt like
Oh,
it felt like
y'all got fancy. Oh my God.
Rhonda, can you mute yourself, please, ma'am?
I love it.
It felt like we had some pretty substantive questions that didn't want to address. Is there a way for whoever's presenting to mute Rhonda remotely?
Oh my God, y'all hear me?
Fabian, can you do
She's
that?
leaving
I
from
can't.
here.
Yeah,
This is
I'm looking for
beautiful.
a-
Swag committee, very nice. I don't know. Don't get me. Oh, thank you.
I just muted her.
Thanks. I love online meetings. I think there's nothing that precludes us, but it felt like we had some pretty substantive questions specifically around the $300,000 minimum and the $800,000 maximum that we wanted to discuss, and it felt weird to go ahead without him being here. Obviously, we can certainly do that. You know, if the other members of the subcommittee feel fine with it, I'm just trying to be respectful to their work. Hearing no strong opinions, we will go ahead and table this until Saturday. Hopefully we'll, and if Michael's not there, I do think you're right, Ramona, we just need to move forward, in which case, congratulations, you're the new chair of the eligibility subcommittee. All right.
Let me on mute. No. I'm a team player, but not a chair.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Okay. We are at 7:07. We can absolutely go ahead and adjourn this meeting early. If people who are interested in fixing the SVI section want to stay on now, obviously several of us are here. We could certainly go ahead and take that up in the last hour and then have it ready to go for Saturday, or everybody can cut their losses and run. Anybody have thoughts or suggestions?
I'm available to stay.
All right, thank you all. I'll be running. You all take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, council member. Thanks for your input. All right, we're gonna do it this way. So our agenda for next meeting is just gonna be trying to knock these out. That's it. That's all that's our entire agenda. Bordeaux Library on the 13th. If anyone, we don't need, can we move, do we need to move to adjourn? We can't really vote, but let's hypothetically move to adjourn unless you want to stay and talk about our new SVI section, baby. Oh, there's a question from David. How are we doing with budget delegates? Fabian, how are we doing with budget delegates? You're muted, kind sir.
By now, I thought that I would know. I have 11 confirmed budget delegates so far, and many others. I'm trying to schedule time to talk to them. I put a call on social media, and each one of you, if you can actually help me find people in your districts, that would be great. Like Jason, I think we don't have anybody from your district, for example. So honestly,
I'll be somebody by the end of tomorrow.
Okay. It's not, as you saw, you are not one from each district, but you're really doing a good job representing the whole city. So I'm aiming for 35 budget delegates, but if we get 20, I will be happy because I think they will be able to manage the job. But I'm trying to go for 35 just to be as equitable and inclusive as possible. So if you guys know anybody, please ask them to sign up on the website or just send me an email and I'll follow up with them.
You, Fabian. And then I see a question from Tyler. Can we expand our hours for the next in-person? I personally have a hard out at 3. I would be available to meet earlier if we needed to. My hope is that we will be able to breeze through this if we stay on target. But does anyone else have thoughts about expanding our hours on the 13th?
We can actually talk to the library and ask them to have extra hours just in case, if you want. Or we can add like half an hour. We can make it flexible so you guys can decide. Because you cannot vote now. Sorry.
Yes, we cannot vote now. Okay, how about if folks will just go ahead and send in what their availability would be. If you would like to do David suggesting start at noon. Yeah, if y'all if y'all want to just be chairless for the tail end of the meeting, that's fine with me.
I definitely cannot make noon on that day. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. We may be restricted by folks, different folks' obligations. Lindsay's available earlier, later. Everybody just send what your availability would be into Fabian and Quinta. That would be great. We can take a look at it, see if there's anything we can do. But
Can I ask a question, Whitney, please?
always.
Hello,
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Quinta. Okay, so since we've already discussed two of the three, the community engagement and the roles and responsibility, and then we just finished discussing voting and proposal development, we would just have eligibility and the SBI section to review. So we really don't need to go over all of that again. We just put it together in one document so that you could see it as it flowed. And if we get it out earlier than the meeting, then people could see how their section, they can confirm their section is correct. I guess that's what is a good thing to say. They could confirm their section is correctly represented. So we would really only have to review eligibility and the SBI section. And I think over the 2 hours, you could get that done between 1 and 3. Does anyone see any difficulty with that process to just review eligibility and SBI section and make sure that when you get your document, you have already previously reviewed to make sure that what's written is representing what the committees have presented, that you all have discussed in the meeting. So you will also have copies of the minutes by the time you come to the meeting on Saturday, so you could compare if you had some doubt about the discussion. It would have been written in the minutes how you resolved it from the previous conversation. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's very sound logic, Ms. Quinta.
So I think we can do it between 1 and 3.
I think we can too.
Can I have a follow-up question on that? Do you still,
Yes, Fabian.
we still want Quinta to send you all the documents? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I'll do that.
Follow-up question.
All right.
What is our
last call.
involvement?
Oh, Nick.
Yeah, sorry. What is our, so assuming we adopt the guidelines Saturday, what does our meeting timeline look like after that? Have we discussed that?
You will be meeting once a month online, unless you need to do something. Guys will need to tell us what is the day that you prefer to meet. If you got on the weekend, schedule a recurrent meeting.
Fabian, you broke up pretty bad through all of that, but it sounds like what we heard was we'll be meeting once a month, and if there are more meetings necessary, we will schedule those. Is that what you said?
Something like that. That's not what I said, but yeah, you got it.
And the once a month meetings were virtual unless we had to vote on anything. That's what happened before. If you want to continue that practice, unless you needed to vote, the once a month meetings were virtual.
Thank you so much for that insight. All right, anybody else? Anybody like to fake move to adjourn? Great. Anyone want to fake second to adjourn?
I fake second.
Okay, great. If you want to stay on the call to work on this SVI section, stay on the call. Otherwise, you're all free to go. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you on Saturday the 13th.
Thank you.
May the force be with you.
And also with you. My dog is snoring so much. He's gotten over the pest control guy's existence. He's asleep. This is delightful. All right, so I take it if you're still here on the phone that you are are interested in figuring out how to best do this SVI section. So the way I see it, we've got those two sections to combine. Does anybody who is significantly smarter at structuring things want to kick off that conversation? Okay, what is our goal with this section?
Whitney, do you want us to help you put in a document on the screen or something that you can share?
I don't know. I mean, unless we have somebody who wants to like actively type directly into a Google Doc so we can all look at it while we're working. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, I can try and do that.
Okay, do we want to give Nick the ability to present then?
Yeah, I'm making you the presenter, Nick.
Dun, dun, dun. Should come with a little trumpet. And thank you all for being willing to stay for this. So what is our goal here? Our goal is to make a new section that deals with the specifics of SVI with regard to funding. Does that sound right to everybody? Once again, I can't see most of you, so unless somebody is screaming no at me, I will not know that you disagree.
I think that sounds right to me. So like the SVI sort of language is peppered throughout the document. I think it makes sense, at least in some of the little subsections, to pull it out and put it in its own neat little home.
So this will be a good way to think about it. Elizabeth, I'm not trying to ask you to take the lead on this in any way, but do you have any SVI stuff in your incredibly comprehensive opening section?
Not that I recall.
Okay. There's none in community engagement. There is definitely some proposal development and voting.
Yeah, I'm just not sure I have the latest voting file. I'm not sure where to find that. I can pull what we have from this file, but
I think most of that voting language came from the old, like that was orphans from the original stuff we got.
okay. Okay, it looks like all these sections. Yeah, these look the same as what he shared. Okay, I'm just gonna cut and paste.
Interestingly enough, the SVI map lives in eligibility. I'm going to start riding my bike past Michael's house.
It sounded like we wanted to strike this. I don't see a cross through it.
And it seemed like everybody was generally fine with your waterfall language, which thank you, by the way, for figuring all of that out. Okay, so then this stuff from voting feels like maybe it needs to open the section.
Yeah. Makes sense. Top. I think there might be some contradictions. Well, like this doesn't gel with the multiple SVI districts logic.
Okay, so how would we phrase that? Does it need a comma unless the project serves multiple SVI districts. I really don't want to be the only person doing this, folks, so please just jump in. I can't see you, so I don't know if you're raising your hands, but just feel free to hop in and have a normal conversation like people do.
Go off mute, but I have a screaming kid in the background.
Understood. We appreciate that.
You could do open parentheses, S close parentheses after quartiles, and it would just indicate that there could be multiple.
So elegant. Thank you. No, just put
yeah.
Sorry, Nick, just put an S in parentheses after quartile, so it's quartile.
Oh, I see.
quartiles.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Got it. Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. And then this next section looks like it is related to your waterfall section.
Let's see. I think that's okay as written.
I agree. I think that's clear.
I think those next 3 bullets, let's see, were they?
I think these overlap.
Those are kind of all the same. I mean, not the same thing, but they're kind of together, addressing the problem of resources. And then we get really specific with our proposal development section about the physical footprint. So I don't know if we could, if those 3 bullets need to go after or before our section, before that 4th bullet that you can see there, physical footprint bullet. If they could be moved around a little bit to, I don't know what the order would be.
It does feel like your section should maybe move up. Although
Really, the first bullet that's up there is about asking for more money, which can kind of stand alone, I guess. In some
yeah.
way. The bottom,
And then the next one needs to come with it because the next one is friends with it. Right? Because that's saying what we would do with the additional money.
yeah, I think that's right.
I feel like your instinct to move all 3 of those bullets down below your waterfall structure is right.
Any objections? Well,
Do those bottom 3 things read logically, and do they reflect kind of what all of the discussion around this has been? What if there's a tie on projects that span multiple SVIs? Am I overthinking this?
Well, I like that. I hadn't thought about this before, but we kind of ran into the problem in proposal development, possibility of trying to game out every single scenario that could ever happen and provide a solution to it, which we it's just not feasible or practical. But the fact that we're playing the role of the legislative branch now, but also get to play the role of the SCOTUS later, the steering committee of the United States, where I think that provides comfort to me, knowing that we can adjudicate one-off issues later, case by case, instead of having to game out the entire world of scenarios that happen here.
Yes,
That's
but
why the
once
oversight
you
is
become
part
SCOTUS,
of
will
your-
someone pay for my mom's house? Sorry, Fabian, go ahead.
That's why the oversight is such an important part of your responsibility as a steering committee, because you can't really predict everything, and keeping an eye on things and being available.
Yeah, I think part of the discussion too was that we wanted to have we wanted to think these through a bit, just because once we're presented with actual projects, the projects themselves will kind of influence how we adjudicate, I think, instead of kind of being impartial to the project. So we were trying to kind of think through beforehand, how would we adjudicate not knowing what the projects are before we're presented with something.
Yeah, definitely agree. Broadly, we can get some good clarification.
Elizabeth, Carol, Jarrett, anything from y'all? Veronica?
Got nothing.
We just scroll to the top of this subsection. We can kind of go. Let's see. So we start with just scroll on down and start it with the supplemental. There we go. Starting with just the fact that it's going to tell what it is, and then let's see.
I'm thinking this probably should live in the voting section, just because it's regarding the ballot. I mean, you could make a case for either, I guess.
That makes sense. Did y'all within your eligibility section have any, or I'm sorry, within your proposal development section have any like see supplemental guidelines reference?
I don't think so.
Because it's so important, I might put it in both sections.
Okay, I like that. Okay, I'm gonna. Unless anybody says. Oh, voting is at the end.
I do think a reference is probably appropriate, but I think that can be something that Carol, is she on here? Does she know I'm giving her more work? She could probably build in some cross references as well.
I'm here. I took note of that, Elizabeth.
There's like a
We love you so much.
seamless opportunity to put cross references into and define things that are capitalized.
Exciting.
Well, my question was going to be if there's anything that we're cross-referencing, is there something where one is going to take precedent over the other? Will there be a situation where, if this happens, this section takes precedence over that section?
Yes, I think that generally speaking, when you're saying, see this other section, like for more detail, basically, you can, when you say like see infra whatever section that you're saying, like, please refer to that section. With this, I don't know that you would need to have, I just think referencing the fact that it's going to be something that's on the ballot is important, again, for voting, but I do think it's also important to set the stage when you're about to talk about the SVI here, and I don't think it would conflict. But yes, I mean, I think generally speaking, when you're referencing, you can say, see the section, for an explanation of whatever. I don't think there'll be a conflict. I'm so wordy today. The
Okay,
answer is
I
it's
just
gonna be no.
wanted,
Mhm.
yeah, I just wanted to bring that up in case I wasn't sure if there would be an instance of a conflict.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on this?
I really like the solution to the multiple SVI districts. I think it's really smart. It's written in a way that's very clear and it's helpful. That was a big problem to get around in terms of conceptually how to handle it. And I think having the clear parameters and something to apply is really smart.
I agree with that completely. That was really a stroke of genius. So thank you.
Oh man.
All right. Well then if nobody, is there anything else about SVI that would need to be added to this section? Is there anything else that's unclear? Do we need to put any reference now that we know that future adjudication, as Tyler put it, is possible? Do we need to put a line stating that future adjudication is possible?
I'm in favor of that.
Could we say something general like the steering committee has discretion to adjudicate on funding where the guidelines, I don't know. Think on the exact.
Stated earlier, right? Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Isn't that in the roles and responsibilities section?
We have information, we have it stated that anything about overages would be up to the steering committee. We also reference oversight. I think that's the old version, possibly.
Yeah, that version does not have any of our revisions.
Hey, Whitney, I had two comments. I saw that map again. I feel like the map on SVI might need to be in the SVI section. And the second, or maybe not. My second question was, can you repeat what you were thinking about? Because I don't know that I really understood what you were saying. You're speaking about the adjudication piece. I'm just fuzzy on that. Can you guys explain again?
Fabian had mentioned earlier that if some of this, and if I get this wrong, Fabian, please correct me, if some of this stuff needs to change once we get into the actual budgeting consideration stage, like once we start rolling through and figuring out what's getting what money, that is something that it's possible for us to amend these things down the road. So I'm just wondering if we need to make reference to the fact that at any time down the road, the steering committee could and has the power to amend
by majority vote.
What, Fabian?
By majority vote, yeah, you have to. That's a given that this document is a living document, and you can change it with the majority vote at any time.
How about this? I will go look through our current draft and make sure that that's in there.
I think that's a good idea because I do feel like it's something that should be spelled out. I mean, it could even
I agree.
go at the very top that, as a disclaimer, this document is a living document and can be amended by the steering committee by a majority vote at any time.
I think it is in there. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think that Ms. Martin is correct, but I'll definitely go through and make sure.
On the adjudication point, I thought what he was talking about was the practice that the budget delegates use with regards to, the voting, after the voting takes place and the count is going through the process. If you come up with a situation where you have a question as to whether or not this is a duplicate vote by a person in the same residence, or if there's a question as to whether or not the vote is eligible to be counted, that is also taken back to the steering committee. They're called provisional ballots, and those provisional ballots are not automatically tossed out. They're taken back to the steering committee for there to adjudicate as to whether or not they will be included or excluded. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's written in the voting section, but I think that's what someone was suggesting because it's a practice that's occurred for the last two cycles, but I'm not quite sure it's in the voting section.
Jason is going to work on adding that after today's meeting because that was, I think, new information for all of us. So
Right.
he's going to work on putting that in for Saturday. And then Elizabeth is going to see if there's anything in the most updated draft of roles and responsibilities regarding our ability as a steering committee to make an amendment to anything at any time. Anything else? And Elizabeth, you think the map should be moved into this section?
I saw it scroll by and I thought, oh, there's the map. And we were talking about it. So I thought maybe it would make sense. Yes.
It's always nice to have maps close to where they're being discussed.
And just the discussion of what it is, which is nice.
Right.
Could we make this subsection or section, whatever we want to call it, instead of calling it supplemental guidelines, we just yeah, there you go. We kind of have the same header as format as the other sections.
Yeah, sure. Dig it. Yeah, and I went back and looked at eligibility and pulling that out of eligibility, at least as it stands in the previous guidelines. It's not like all of a sudden that section becomes nonsensical. You can definitely just claw that out and put it back down someplace else. Okay.
You guys are
Good.
awesome.
What?
You guys are awesome.
Veronica, thoughts?
No. No. I'm just trying to digest all the information.
Does this seem like generally clear?
Yes.
Because that's the other thing is I want to make sure that all of this is going to be clear to people who haven't spent the last several months just face down in it,
To me, it's definitely clear.
Okay. Well, I rely on you to be a really good voice for the people, so I appreciate your thoughtfulness on that.
Thank you.
It would be nice to see the final collated version with all our changes in.
I
Right
agree.
where we're at on this page right now, the second bullet point, it says, for example, once the first quartile has exhausted its $4 million budget, we have a $10 million budget.
But I think that's the first SVI quartile.
Yeah, I have to fix it. That was a typo.
But that's the first quartile of SVI is the 75% or more vulnerable, and that does have a budget of $4 million. So that's what I took that to mean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it might be helpful. Could I add in an SVI 1, 2, 3, 4? I feel like it would be helpful to give them labels.
Which one's 1 and which one's 4? Is it ascending or descending?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wonder if that should be reversed.
The most vulnerable being 1.
Well, if we're going to refer to it as the first.
Maybe it should be in inverse order. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should just flip the table upside down. I'm really, really impressed with your speed editing on this table. That is some high quality stuff.
I live in Excel.
I completely agree. What is your day job? That's incredible. I mean, that is pro level.
Really good. But I live in Excel also, but this is Word, so like you're blowing my mind right now. I didn't even know you're allowed to do what you just did.
Okay, amazing. Any last
So is there numbering? I mean, I guess the important part is just that it's consistent with the rest of the way it's referred to in the document, which I guess this is all the SVI, hopefully all the SVI language.
That one section. It's up here. If the first quartile, yeah, okay, that's consistent.
And so now I'm seeing why those 3 bullets that we moved were right after this, because it says no more first quartile projects will be funded, and then we moved the ones that said that the council could ask for more money. Still think it should have been moved. I'm just wondering if we need to say like see bullets below, or the possibility regarding the possibility of more funding.
Right. So like no more first quartile projects will be funded unless.
Except as, outlined below with, I think, so there's a little schema below for any overflow.
Except those outlined, except by the process outlined below.
Yeah, or we could even just say see below for the, yeah, I'm not being very eloquent. So the process below is.
Do we need this sentence at all? I'm wondering if we just say, yeah, I feel like that's sufficient.
Good point.
And then you could just say, see below for, what do we call it? The waterfall provisions. I think just see below, however you want to do see below. Or how are we going to talk about? There it is.
Additional, these word guidelines too much.
Instruction.
On how additional monies might be allocated to this quartile in the event of a tie. Or, additional, or basically extra funds or whatever. Because that's really what we're saying, right? I think that's fine. In the event of, unspent funding or unallocated would be another word. Oh, I like that. We can just do see below for instructions. Take out the addition. Because there are 2 additionals in that sentence. That's painful. Sorry. We got there though.
It's good. Can we?
I like that too. Yeah, go ahead.
But down within each quartile, if there's a tie or if the available funds do not cover the can we lose the space between vote hyphen and getting?
Which bullet point? Sorry.
3 down from there, the one that starts with. There you go. I know I'm just saving Carol work upstream, downstream. And then the Metro Council may attempt to secure additional money. It do we need to have anything in there about this, it being the steering committee's responsibility to refer these potential projects to Metro Council, or are we to assume that Metro Council will see and interpret all in that instance?
I think it makes sense to be explicit. The chair should send a letter to council rep, maybe, with the request. I don't know if it needs to be that formal.
Since the, is there a Metro is there a Metro Council liaison or something like that in the roles?
It's Zilfat, yeah. But I think there's just all of a sudden a gap in like the chain of command. That's not the right phrase, but like in how this would be passed from one thing to the next. Should it just say like a discretion of Metro or other agencies, the steering committee may ask Metro Council to attempt to secure additional money?
Whitney?
Fabian.
You can ask the Metro Council for more money, but it's really, it probably be unnecessary. I tell you what happened on the second cycle. Many of the departments decided to use some of their funds to offset the cost of some of the projects. Like for example, stormwater put some money in, MMPS is putting some money in. So I think they have reserves, and they think that that is doable. They may naturally choose to do that. The way the charter is written, I don't think the council has the ability to allocate money on its own. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's okay to ask, but I will say mostly, instead of asking the Metro Council, to ask the city of Nashville or the Metro government then to secure additional money. Because the money may come from different perspectives.
Then what was the original intent of this bullet point?
It was something that stayed from the time that I originally used this from Vallejo, California, that has a stronger Metro Council. And I think I never really realized that it was off the Metro Charter. So my advice will be, if you guys want to do that, instead of saying Metro Council, just say Metro Government or Metro Council and or Mayor's Office or something like that, just to make it more expansive. Am I making sense?
Yes. If we make that change, it still doesn't really necessarily address how Metro government would learn about the situation or be advised to the situation. Again, though I may be overthinking this. Am I the only one who cares about this?
Can we just say the steering committee can request additional funding from Metro agencies or council?
I think my question is this are we trying to say that is it steering committee or is it budget delegates who are working with these agencies, and then the agency would say, hey, we can do this project. We'll, Parks has this amount of money, so we can get this thing done. Is it for the purposes of decision making?
The way it is done is you're basically telling the budget delegates, don't expect any more money from the agencies. It's somewhere else in the guidelines. So the budget delegates won't be asking for more money because you told them not to. What you're saying is that after all is done, if it comes up that there is a project that is short like $50,000, you want to have the flexibility to ask the department, hey, what about it? If we choose this project, would you consider adding some money so we can add a 13th or 14th project? There is no guarantee that they will do it, but you're giving yourself the chance to be able.
Perfect. That's exactly what I didn't understand. Thank you.
So could we say that in the subject to available resources in the discretion of Metro or other agencies, the steering committee may attempt to secure additional money by making a request to the Metro Council?
Or maybe just directly to the agencies, right? I mean, is that what I'm hearing? That we would just, request it directly from?
You will always go through me or whoever replaces me. So you will never be talking directly to agencies. So that's why I was saying, ask the government.
I mean, can you move forward and say that again?
Yes. What I'm saying is, you are actually going to go through the mayor's office, through me if I'm still there or whoever replaces me. And that person will be the one that'll be the pipeline with the departments or the Metro Council or whatever. So what I'm saying is the language, I would recommend that you say to reach out to the Metro government or the mayor's office liaison or whoever is your contact with Nashville, and give yourself the opportunity to ask that liaison to secure additional funds for that project.
Are you all fine? Can we strip out the subject to available resources? I don't think we need
Yes.
I was going to suggest that you just eliminate that section right there that you're talking about, the Metro, because it worked out anyway. When you went, after you took the vote back to the, for the approval, that's when the departments actually stepped up and said that they would add the additional funding. So if you're talking, you've got this in a section that is seeming like the steering committee has some authority at this particular point. But in actuality, it has to be after the vote and after the project's been awarded, right? Right? So do you really need do you really need that section of that paragraph?
Well, that's what they are trying to decide. It's their decision.
It seems like you don't really need it because it works out itself in the other paragraphs that you already have.
That's what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily been awarded at this point because they're either out of money or there's a tie. Trying to figure out how to get it awarded.
So that's in your watershed process, right?
That's what I was originally confused about, right? From this section, I was thinking that it had to do with decision making, rather than allocation after the project was voted on. And that, I do think that we are all talking about two different things.
It's kind of conflicting with the rest of the paragraph. I mean, the rest of the section.
Do we change, instead of saying within each quartile, do we say at the end of the allocation process? Since I think that's what we're talking about, we get through to the end and there's one little orphan swing set hanging out there. We can, and then the steering committee would have the opportunity to go to parks and say, hey, can we have $3,000 to finish this little swing set that tied with the water fountain or something?
Is this before the vote or after the vote?
After.
So when it goes into, Fabian, correct me if I'm not saying this right. After the vote, and you take it to the departments for execution, they will tell you whether or not this project is going to be funded at the level that was initially identified in the voting process. Because when you get there, say the project cost 300,000 when they voted, but by the time it gets to the, say, the Parks and Recs Department or the Transportation Department, it may cost 400,000. So if it costs 400, that's why you have the contingency funds. But at that point, that's what happened in the second cycle when it got back to the Parks and Recreation or whatever department. The department made the decision that even though it was voted on at a level of, say, 300,000, and it cost 400,000 now, the department decided to fund it anyway with funds that it had. So are you talking about after you go through that process, if you still have a project you want funded? Are you talking about getting the projects that are now over cost funded with funds that were not in the original budget? Because that might take you over your 10 million. And so you'll have to find a way to get those projects funded that have been voted on and selected by the ballot. The department picked up that extra cost. Is that correct, Fabian?
It's you. I'm trying not to tell them what to do. So it's, if Whitney or the committee asks me a question, I'll answer. But I'm uncomfortable getting into this conversation unless they want me to answer.
We've gone beyond my capacity to fully understand what we're talking about. So let me try and break it down, and then please, Elizabeth, Nick, Tyler, anybody else jump in. So this section that is in question is an orphan from guidelines from a different city that has somehow drifted through 2 cycles of PB and washed up upon our shores. So we could certainly just cut the whole thing and forget about it, but within it, there is the opportunity to say what I think I'm hearing us on the committee saying, which is, if at the end of the waterfall, there is still a tie, or we need a little bit more additional funding to cover something that was voted in or was the next highest thing voted in, that there is the potential for the steering committee to go to, I like this phraseology, Tyler, the relevant metro department and request additional funding. Now, Quinta, you've now brought up this reality that I don't think I was previously aware of, that, you know, when these things go after the vote and after everything's been allocated or decided what projects we're going to fund, then they go to these metro departments. These metro departments say, well, you gave it $300,000, but we can't afford it at $300,000, so it's going to have to be $400,000. And then they decide to give the extra money. That then also brings up to me the inverse, which is to say that, well, it's $400,000 and we don't have $100,000, so now we can't do that project. Is that a potential reality, Fabian?
Yeah, so, and that's why when we ask the departments to estimate a project, we ask them to inflate the price to make sure that they will be able to do it a year to include some contingency. But what happened on the last year is because the inflation was so high, some of the projects, most of the projects, by the time it was time to build them, the budget wasn't. I don't think that will necessarily happen next year, mostly because we're going to emphasize to the departments that they include a contingency for inflation when the budget is built. But in the case that for whatever reason the inflation was so dramatic that there is not enough money to do it, they have only 2 choices. One is, if there is not enough money to build a project at the value that it had been estimated, then it will come back to you to say that project cannot be done for that money anymore. Just a different project, or do you want to really limit some of the items on that project so it will meet the budget? So it will come back to you as an oversight team to do that, or you will maybe tell me, can you ask the departments to see if they can offset the cost? So it is, I'm not going to lie to you and say that inflation won't happen again, but we're going to take extra steps to make sure that in the proposal development phase, that the budget for each one of the proposals covers the potential inflation cost. Did I answer your question?
It does, but then it brings up the unfortunate reality that like the best project that everybody in town voted for could potentially not get funded because we don't have funding for it. So then do we need to put, something in here? Again, it's 8 o'clock and I don't want to overcomplicate this. Do we need to put something in here that says in the event that one of the top vote getting projects cannot be funded by the department that it falls under, that we come back and reallocate all the funds to ensure that those top projects can be funded, even if it means losing smaller vote getting projects?
I think you have it already on the language. That you can do that.
This is after.
I guess maybe while we were talking, I was just kind of thinking like, so with the, if there's a project that, as the bullet says, if there's available funds don't cover the cost of the next highest vote getting project. So this is like, it's kind of this is like a project that's at the bottom of the waterfall. It costs just over the amount of money that's still available within its SVI bucket. Is it the case that it just doesn't get funded and then this money flows over per the immediately preceding bullet point to the next SVI bucket to fund those projects?
Not automatically. It'll come back to the steering committee to make that decision. So you guys, if I go, let's say 10 projects got funded and one of those projects cannot be done anymore for whatever reason, then I will come back to you at the following meeting and say, look, this project in particular it got, it's not doable. So you guys need to decide an alternate project. And at that point, you will probably look for the next vote getter and see if that one can get funded.
Even that's again where I get incredibly uncomfortable is if the number one vote getter, if the number one vote getter is permanent ice cream trucks on every corner in town. It's a terrible example, but let's roll with it.
Yeah.
Majority of people who vote in this process think that that is the best one. And the cost of that is $300,000 to pull off. And then we say, great, and we allocate all the funds to the next lower things. We've got it all worked out. We know which projects we're funding. It goes off to be built, right? And then the Department of Ice Cream Trucks comes back and says, actually, no, that's going to cost us $400,000 and we're not going to give you the extra $100,000. Should we not put a provision in here that says at that point, we crack the whole thing back open and now we fund that at $400,000 to make sure the voice of the people is being heard, which then might knock something off the bottom of the list? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Because that's like worst case scenario, and I feel like we should be protected against it, because I don't think the steering committee should be the ones to say, hey, entire city, y'all voted for all this stuff, but it turns out one of the things can't work. So instead of trying to find a solution to fulfill your wishes, you've just gone ahead and
Hey, why wouldn't it be funded in like in your is that I don't know what's happening. Why wouldn't it be why wouldn't it in your example like work the way that you said with like if it's comes back and it costs an extra $100,000, it was still the top vote getter, so it gets that $400,000 and then one does fall off the bottom? Are we saying that $400,000 is completely eliminate, like, unable to happen, or would it would get funded because that's the top vote getter, and then whatever's at the bottom, that project falls off, the bucket goes up to the preceding bullet point there that says that all gets kind of pooled?
What I was hearing from Fabian is that if something can't be funded, then it falls off the list entirely and that funding gets redistributed to the next thing down on the list.
I didn't say that. I'm sorry if that's the impression you get. What I'm saying is I come back to you and say this ice cream truck project, instead of including chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, which you consider just doing chocolate and vanilla and funded at $300,000. So you can still find a way to do that, and you have the power to make adjustments within what is on the project page. What you cannot do is fund something that it was never discussed or never created by the budget delegates. but you will have flexibility to work with that. Now, if you know, you guys have the ability to redraw this, if you want to do that, just keep in mind that if you tell people we are not going to fund all these other projects that come after the top one, then you may not be, you may be upsetting somebody else down the road that now told them that you were going to fund the project and now maybe it's not funded. So my advice will be that so the ability to work with the project to address that. In all the years that we've done this, we never faced anything where we couldn't do the project. The only time we couldn't do a project was people wanted for us to see if we could do this landscaping in a detention pond, and we had told them that there was not for certain that it could be done. They insisted that we put it anyway, and then after we talked with Stormwater told us that we couldn't. That project got funded from the project, and another project that got defunded on the first cycle was the Buchanan Art District. That people, they had a community meeting, and then the community told them that they don't wanted it, so they defunded that project. So my point is that I think I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that it's going to be something where you won't be able to fund the project. I think what you're going to do is make some adjustment to the project if it comes to be that for whatever reason money is not there. I promise you. I promise you that I will make sure that there's plenty of money for each one of these budget items for inflation.
Yeah, because in that case, kind of going back to where we started, like, let's just request, if something falls out and it can't be funded, let's just request more money as a steering committee. Whether we get it or not is a different matter, I suppose, but.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, what we're really getting at is that if we run into a tie or if there's a funding issue, it's not the end of the road, right? That's really what this seems to be saying, is that there is this capacity for the steering committee to go to the mayor's office and to say, hey, is there any more money available? That's what if we really simplify it.
Yeah. And then should we put, I agree with that, Elizabeth, completely. And then should we put a line in here or a suggestion in here that we not tell people that their projects are going to be funded until we're sure that their projects are going to be funded?
I would actually say the opposite. I think by saying that the projects are funded is more likely to create the political will to get that additional funding, should that extreme case happen.
Okay. Is that you, Jacob, by the way?
This has been passed now. I just
hi,
told
Ben.
maybe 20 minutes ago.
Okay. So we're literally back where we started, which I totally dig. Do we want to keep going or do we want to call it for tonight and pick it up with the full group on Saturday? Because I think we're very close.
Let's put my language in there and call it.
Yeah, what could you remind me?
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat.
Okay. And how do y'all feel about just getting rid of these qualifications? Like within each quartile, if there's a tie, I'm thinking.
Agree.
Yes.
Just, yeah, we can ask council for more money without the need for a tie or anything. Okay. I am struggling to, oh, there's chat. Good.
Nick, delete one of the steering committees.
Yes.
Just having a small stroke.
Yeah, from can request and make that may request.
Great.
Let's make it shall request.
Shall.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Anything else right now that is pressing that we want to go over in this small group, or are we ready to call it and move the rest of this to Saturday?
We just have one little bullet at the end that says if anything isn't clear, steering committee will, or if there's a one-off problem that isn't specifically addressed, the steering committee is able to adjudicate that problem. I'm not sure that that's clear that we have that ability in the language that's in here. Unless it's in roles and responsibilities or something. I'm not really sure about that.
I think we were talking about making a catch-all for that, were we not?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Like elsewhere in the guidelines.
Yeah, I think in roles or.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. No, nothing else from me.
Elizabeth?
I think we're pretty good. Probably, I'm a slow thinker, so I probably just need to read over it.
Okay. Carol?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Veronica?
I'm good, thank you.
Jarrett?
Very good.
All right, sweet. Thank you so much, everybody, for staying 11 minutes past our bedtime. Get this done. Let's make sure that this is included in the complete packet that's going to go out to everybody out of Saturday's meeting. And goodbye. I love you all.
Thank you.
I'm going to Jason's
Bye.
house for dinner. See
Good
you
job,
there.
Whitney. Great job.
Good job to all of you. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Have a good evening and a good week till we meet again.
Farewell.
Bye.